Elaine McCallan never thought a hobby could take over her entire life, let alone save it. Her father had been a woodworker who believed in dovetail joints and hushed concentration, and so the sound of saws, the smell of cedar, and the feel of sandpaper were as familiar to her as her own pulse. She had parlayed that inheritance into something unusual. High-end, bespoke birdhouses for suburbanites who treated wildlife like accessories, tiny Cape Cods, Tudor mansions, and even one brutalist concrete cube, properly aerated and weather-sealed, of course, for a Silicon Valley transplant who liked irony. The orders paid the mortgage on her split-level home in Meadowbrook Ridge, a manicured development 30 miles outside Washington, D.C. Clients loved her attention to authenticity, but her real passion lay in attracting hummingbirds. The textbooks insisted that hummingbirds did not nest in houses, yet Elaine had spent 6 years experimenting with materials and dimensions until a female ruby throat finally stitched a nest to the hemp twine woven beneath one of her cedar eaves. The miracle convinced her that you could coax wonder out of wood if you respected its subtleties. A week before the story truly began, Elaine had installed a new ultra-high-speed micro-camera, barely the size of a rice grain, in a prototype feeder disguised as a honey locust blossom. The device came from a small supplier in Oregon that catered to wildlife filmmakers, and she justified the expense by telling herself she could sell slow-motion footage to nature channels. What she secretly wanted was to witness something private and impossible. The beating of a hummingbird's wings in crystalline detail, the moment a tongue flicked deep into nectar. On Wednesday afternoon, the weather threatened but never delivered rain, so the neighborhood lawns glittered under a cover of suppressed thunder. Elaine sat in her studio above the garage, editing footage for a client in Bethesda who wanted his daughter's initials carved onto the gables of a birdhouse resembling Monticello. A soft chirp from the monitoring laptop announced motion detection. She glanced at the screen, expecting the usual blur of iridescent emerald, but her eyes snagged on something new. A bird with violet flank feathers unlike any species common to Virginia. She leaned forward. Yes, tiny white collar, golden crown. She was seeing a bumblebee hummingbird, a species native to Mexico, the world's smallest. Either an errant migrant blown astonishingly off course, or more likely a smuggled exotic that had escaped captivity. Elaine nearly squealed. The bird hovered, dipped its bill into the feeder's port, and for 2 exquisite seconds, time slowed the way it does. Only for those who love a thing so much that every frame feels like a lifetime. But then another motion intruded on the corner of the picture. A blur of human hands just beyond the fence line, separating Elaine's property from her neighbor's. Her neighbor was Eric Porter, a retired Department of Energy analyst. A quiet widower, always trimming rosebushes, polite wave at the mailbox, faded polo shirts, unremarkable in every sense. Elaine would not have given his backyard a second glance if not for the hands that entered her camera's periphery. She switched to a wider angle and replayed the buffer at half speed. The feed captured the hummingbird at the feeder, and then, there, a hand reached into the frame from Porter's side, holding a glossy maple leaf. On its underside, barely visible, was a tiny rectangular patch no bigger than a postage stamp. The hand folded the leaf and tucked it into the crook of Porter's garden trellis before retreating. Seconds later, a different hand, wearing a thin black glove, appeared. It plucked the folded leaf and vanished. The entire exchange lasted maybe 6 seconds. Elaine blinked. She scrubbed the footage again. Same sequence. Her mind rifled through possible innocent explanations. neighborhood scavenger hunt, children playing spy. But the precision of the movement argued against whimsy, and that rectangular patch looked like microfilm or the sort of memory wafer used in certain secure data transfers. Slowly, the gravity of what she might possess settled around her shoulders like wet wool. She made herself tea even though it was 80 degrees. As steam rose, she replayed the clip on her phone, zooming. The leaf's underside bore a dot matrix pattern familiar from the days when she'd interned at a design firm that still used microfiche for archival drawings. Suppress the panic, she ordered herself. Think like wood, be grain strong. That night, thunder finally broke the sky. Rain pinged on the roof while Elaine lay in bed, laptop's blue glow illuminating her face as she Googled microfilm espionage cases leaf dead drop. Links proliferated, Cold War anecdotes, articles about brush passes in Moscow, a Smithsonian piece on the brilliance of banal camouflage. Eric Porter had worked at the DOE. If he retained clearance, perhaps someone was exploiting his access. Or perhaps Porter himself was the conduit. At 1:22 a.m. she emailed the video to herself, encrypted the file, and backed it up to a cloud service under a new alias. She slept in 20-minute increments, mind spinning with improbable sequences of events that led from exotic birds to treason. Morning brought sunshine too clean, indifferent to her dread. She considered calling the police but dismissed it. Local officers would shrug and file a report at best. The FBI had a tip line, and she feared missteps that could alert Porter. So she brewed coffee, turned on her orbital sander, and pretended the world was nothing but cedar edges. By noon, curiosity overpowered caution. She opened the sliding glass door, crossed the lawn carrying a coiled hose, pretext checking sprinkler heads, and paused near the privacy fence. Porter's yard looked normal. Raised boxes filled with tomatoes, a shed, a teak bench. Still, she felt like a diver edging toward black water. She forced herself to step away before he noticed her surveillance. When she returned to the studio, she discovered a new alert. The bumblebee hummingbird again. She toggled the feed. The bird drank. A hand appeared, same leaf folded, placed into the trellis. Elaine's nerves lit like kindling. She hit record on a secondary screen, determined to document every angle. An hour later, a dark-haired woman wearing a floppy sun hat and oversized sunglasses came down Porter's driveway, ostensibly walking a greyhound. The dog sniffed. The woman loitered by the trellis, her hand flicked, the leaf gone. She continued to the cul-de-sac, rounded the corner, vanished. Elaine's heart hammered. 2 exchanges in 2 days, both captured inadvertently because a rare hummingbird had chosen her feeder. Somewhere at the back of her head a voice said, "Call someone." Instead, she printed stills and arranged them on her workbench like jigsaw pieces. The timeline formed a simple pattern. Porter's hand deposits, courier retrieves. She played with scenarios. Porter blackmailed or paid or ideologically motivated. Atomic secrets, energy policy drafts, something someone considered worth microfilm, which remained harder to intercept digitally. A knock at her front door jolted her into a spray of sawdust. She wiped her hands and descended. Eric Porter stood on her porch holding a bottle of wine. "Elaine, hi," he said, smile diffident. "I realized I've never properly thanked you for the Bluebird house. You know, the one you donated to the HOA raffle last spring. I won it." She studied his face. Was that sweat at his hairline? The day was warm, yes, but his eyes looked faintly off focus. "That's kind of you," she managed. "Thought we could share a glass. I'm making coq au vin tonight. Or if you're busy..." He shrugged. Her instinct screamed retreat. But if he suspected nothing, declining might arouse curiosity. I'd love to, but I've got a shipment due tomorrow. Could we rain check? He nodded, disappointment flickering, or maybe calculation. Of course, another time. She watched him walk back across the grass, the bottle swinging from 2 fingers. Only when his door shut did she exhale. She grabbed her phone, typed a message to the FBI tip line, attached 3 stills, and hit send. By evening, no call returned. She paced, reread her email for missing context. Perhaps they received hundreds daily. Perhaps espionage out of a suburban trellis ranked low. At 9:11 p.m., an unknown number flashed. She answered. Ms. McCallan? A crisp female voice. This is Special Agent Nadia Reyes, FBI Counterintelligence. We received your submission. Elaine swallowed. Yes. Can we speak in person? Your residence, in an hour. 1 hour, she agreed. Suddenly her tidy living room felt like evidence against her. She tidied anyway. Agent Reyes arrived with a partner, Special Agent Koenig, tall and taciturn. They set up laptops on her dining table, while Reyes coaxed Elaine through the chronology. Elaine showed the raw footage, pointed to the feeder cam's vantage. Reyes's eyes gleamed at the clarity of the handoffs. We've suspected Porter's involvement with a foreign contact, Reyes said, lowering her voice even though the windows were shut. But until now, our surveillance couldn't penetrate his backyard without a warrant. Your camera angle is fortuitous. Koenig handed Elaine a form. Voluntary consent allows us to install a remote access line into your camera feeds. We won't alter your equipment. Elaine signed, heart galloping. Reyes said, We'll need fresh footage of the next exchange. Can you keep everything routine? Pretend nothing changed? I can try, Elaine said. She felt outside herself, as though watching a movie where the protagonist nods bravely. For 4 days she complied. She built a miniature Victorian dovecote for a Georgetown lawyer and feigned normalcy while her cameras funneled data to a secure FBI server. Each afternoon, Porter's hand slipped a leaf. Each early evening, a courier retrieved it. The hummingbird impossibly kept returning too, an unwitting sentinel. On the 5th day, Reyes summoned her to a safe-house motel 15 minutes away. The agents, now joined by a cybertech named Bellamy, unveiled what they'd extracted, encrypted schematics of a new thorium reactor project housed at the DOE's national labs. Sensitive, but compartmentalized. Porter likely had clearance for portions and was smuggling updates bit by bit. We want the big handoff, Reyes said. Every few weeks, Porter meets his major handler somewhere public. We've surveilled potential spots, parks, farmers' markets. But our intel suggests he'll use his yard this Friday at dusk, bigger data drop. If we can catch the handler receiving classified material, we have both sides. Elaine's stomach clenched. And you need my camera. We'd like you to tweak the feeder angle so we cover more yard. Also, we need real-time confirmation. You'd watch from your studio, message us when the exchange starts. Why not just bug his place with drones? His property lines are restrictive, Reyes said. He has motion sensors, but your equipment is already embedded, drawing no suspicion. Elaine swallowed. She had designed her birdhouses to comfort wildlife, not to snare traitors. Yet the path was set. Friday crawled. At 4:30 p.m., Reyes and Koenig parked an unmarked van 2 streets over. Radio silence would prevail until Elaine's text, Hummingbird in, their agreed code. Porter emerged onto his patio at 6:12, wearing khakis and a white Oxford, carrying what looked like pruning shears, but might have housed microfilm in the grips. Elaine sat before the monitor, thumbs hovering above her phone. The sun dipped, tinting the scene amber. The bumblebee hummingbird zipped to the feeder, an almost comic exclamation of beauty amid nerves. Elaine typed, "Hummingbird in," hit send. A minute later, Porter pulled a rolled piece of bark from under the bench and wedged it into the trellis slot. He retreated into shade. At 6:20, a man in a gardener's uniform walked the alley outside, entered Porter's gate as if hired. He clipped a rosebud, leaned toward the trellis, pocketed the bark. Elaine texted, "Handoff done." From her window she saw nothing, no sirens, no commotion, just ordinary suburban hush. 10 minutes later, a single black SUV cruised past. She almost thought the feds had missed it when her phone vibrated. All good, stand by. Relief dripped but quickly froze when a knock rattled her studio door. Separate from the house entrance, the door opened directly onto the driveway. She stared at the handle. Knock again, firmer. "Elaine? You in there?" Porter's voice. A sliver of panic split her chest. She flicked the monitor dark and opened an unrelated window showing design sketches. "Just a sec," she called, trying to steady timbre. She cracked the door. Porter's expression was relaxed, but his eyes roved past her shoulder. "Working late?" "Deadlines," she said. He held up a Tupperware. "Brought you leftover peach cobbler. Figured you could use sugar." "That's kind." Her phone buzzed in her back pocket. Another message from Reyes, maybe. She shifted to mute it. Porter leaned against the jamb, casual. Too casual. "Funny thing, someone from a pest control company was in my yard earlier. Said he was checking mosquito traps. Didn't hire anyone. Didn't get a license plate. You see anything?" Blood pounded. He was fishing. "Sorry, no. Been glued to CAD files." He grinned. "Another time, then." He handed her the cobbler, turned away. She closed the door, fingers trembling. Inside the house, she set the dessert on the counter, lifted the lid automatically, and saw baked fruit under lattice crust. Nothing else. She laughed at her paranoia, a shaky flutter that refused to settle. Her phone pinged. "Reyes. Got them. Safe to relax. Call you later." Elaine exhaled so violently she coughed. She decided to open a celebratory beer and watch the feeder footage again, a victory lap. The video played smooth until the moment Porter deposited the bark. Then a faint glitch, frame jump, half-second skip. She paused, rewound. There. A flicker of foreign colour on Porter's wrist. A smartwatch she didn't recall seeing before. Its screen displaying an icon, a tiny camera. Realization stabbed. He had been filming his own yard, too. Maybe he liked his roses. Maybe he monitored for trespassers. Or maybe he noticed the impossible coincidence of a hummingbird camera catching every deed. She ice-watered the beer down the sink, sense of triumph evaporating. If Porter's feed uploaded elsewhere, accomplices might learn what happened when he failed to check in. At dawn, agents arrived again, collecting final footage, praising her help. Porter and the courier were in custody, they said. The smartwatch? They'd seized it. No remote signal transmitted. She nodded relief, but found herself scanning trees for invisible watchers. Weeks passed. Headlines broke. Doe insider foiled in espionage plot. Elaine's name stayed absent, replaced by an area resident. Orders for her birdhouses doubled. Press coverage sparked curiosity, but she worked slower, savouring quiet. The bumblebee hummingbird lingered into late September, improbably thriving among scarlet salvia she planted. One twilight she sat on the deck, sketchbook on her lap. Agent Reyes had cleared her of further duty, yet Elaine kept the micro camera installed. Old habits, new vigilance. The tiny bird appeared, haloed by orange sun. Its wings hummed like a distant engine. It fed, then darted away, leaving air quivering. Elaine watched until the vibration faded, thinking how the smallest creature had blown open a secret fit for cinematic intrigue. Wood was grain-strong, yes, but hummingbirds were something else. They were needles threading worlds. And because she'd followed their flight, she'd pierced a veil no one else had seen. She closed her sketchbook. Tomorrow she would start a new series. Birdhouses less ornamental, more sanctuary, with discreet recesses for nest material. A place where fragility could hide if it needed. Though not, she smiled, from justice.